You hear it all the time. Africa is behind, offline, excluded. The reality is we're not offline, we're overexposed. Our data, our lives, our governments, our habits, they are all online, but not here. Not stored in our countries under our laws on our terms. They live in someone else's cloud, on someone else's servers, governed by someone else's idea of value. I am Zainab Taonga Chirwa, and this is Not Just Observers, an AI governance series brought to you by StrangersX about power, governance, and the political economy of AI from an African perspective. We talked about techno-feudalism, how Africa risks becoming both a resource chest and a data mine in the AI revolution. Today, that conversation gets very real, very fast. Because while I was recording this week's episode, something happened that perfectly illustrates everything we've been discussing. On June 27, 2025, in Washington, D.C., the foreign ministers of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo signed what's being called a historic peace agreement. President Trump celebrated the U.S.-brokered peace agreement in an Oval Office ceremony, hailing it as a major step toward peace in Congo following decades of conflict that has killed millions. What the headlines aren't telling you is that this agreement aims to attract billions of dollars of Western investment to a region rich in tantalum, gold, cobalt, copper, lithium, and other minerals. Peace through trade, trade through minerals, minerals through AI dominance. Welcome to episode 2, the new Scramble. The DRC produces 70% of global cobalt production, while its neighbor Rwanda generates around 30% of tantalum. The DRC has 111 million inhabitants in a geographical area the size of Europe. Blessed or cursed by $24 trillion in mineral resources such as copper, cobalt, lithium, gold, and diamonds. Much of it is crucial to the world's transition to electric power, half of it exported to China. But here's the thing about the peace deal that just got signed. It opens the door for the United States to access the vast mineral wealth buried beneath DRC, resources critical to powering the modern world. This isn't just diplomacy. This is what I call mineral diplomacy, where peace becomes a vehicle for resource access, and conflict resolution becomes a pretext for supply chain control. Think about it. In February 2025, the DRC announced a ban on exports of cobalt, which is crucial for electric vehicles. Now, just months later, we have a US-brokered peace deal that conveniently opens up access to these same minerals. Coincidence? The thing is, a mineral deal with the DRC would limit Chinese influence in both the region and the critical minerals market, where China currently dominates the processing of rare earth minerals, cobalt and lithium. Remember what I said in episode 1 about the Trump administration's playbook? The pattern is clear. Peace will be arbitrated by the North American superpower in exchange for strategic resources. And the resources in question aren't just any resources, they are the building blocks of AI infrastructure. Your smartphone, your laptop, the data center processing this podcast, they all depend on the minerals that come from the ground in eastern DRC and Zambia. Demand for cobalt is expected to reach 222,000 tons by 2025, having tripled since 2010. This isn't just economic demand, it's strategic necessity. Now we have the extraction paradox, and this is where it gets complicated. Mining these critical minerals is plagued with internal and cross-border conflicts, worsening conditions for local communities. People are being forcibly evicted or threatened or intimidated into leaving their homes or misled into consenting to settlements. So we have a paradox. The minerals that power our digital future are being extracted through processes that devastate local communities. The peace deal that's supposed to end conflict risks creating new forms of exploitation. The United States mediated peace agreement between the DRC and Rwanda, a development aimed at quelling decades of brutal conflict in Africa's Great Lakes region, might be swapping one form of violence for another. This is the new Scramble in action. Instead of European powers carving up Africa for ivory and rubber, we now have digital powers carving up Africa for cobalt and lithium. The tools have changed, but the logic remains extractive. Now, before we get too focused on the US approach, let's remember that China isn't sitting idle. Half of the DRC's mineral resources are exported to China. China has been building infrastructure, providing loans, and securing mineral rights across Africa for decades. The difference is in the approach. China offers infrastructure first and asks questions later. The US offers peace deals first, then extracts resources. Both approaches treat African nations as sources of raw materials rather than partners in value creation. But here's what's interesting. the Democratic Republic of the Congo is offering the United States access to its mineral resources in an effort to ensure peace and stability in the country. This suggests that African leaders are actively trying to leverage great power competition for their own benefit. The question is, can they succeed? Experts and citizens alike are wary of Tshisekedi's overture to the United States due to the lack of transparency around the deal. While the critical minerals for security and peace deal promises access to vital resources, like cobalt and tantalum for global supply chains, the terms remain largely unclear. This lack of transparency is intentional. When deals are made behind closed doors, accountability becomes impossible. When the details are classified as commercially confidential, democratic oversight disappears. Now let's think about this differently. What if African nations could use this moment of great power competition to their advantage? What if the scramble for critical minerals could become a platform for African agency rather than African exploitation? This brings us back to the central question of the series. Do African nations have to choose between extractive models, or can they forge a third path? I want to share something that gives me hope. While the peace deal was being signed in Washington, African researchers and entrepreneurs were building something different. They are creating what I call beneficiation sovereignty, the ability to process and add value to raw materials before they leave the continent. And what is really exciting is that we're not just talking about processing raw materials anymore, we're talking about building the infrastructure for Africa's AI economy right here on the continent. Just recently, Zimbabwean telecoms tycoon Strive Masiyiwa's Cassava Technologies partnered with Nvidia to construct Africa's AI factory. Graphics processing units, GPUs, have been deployed to South Africa, making us the first recipients of these units in Africa. To quote Masiyiwa, he says, "Collaborating with Nvidia gives us the advanced computing capabilities needed to drive Africa's AI innovation while strengthening the continent's digital independence." Digital independence, that's a key phrase here. Cassava Technologies is investing up to $720 million in the US AI factory, planning to roll out Nvidia's accelerated computing systems and AI software across South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, and Morocco. This isn't just about accessing Western technology. It's about building the infrastructure so that African innovators don't have to look beyond Africa to access cutting-edge AI capabilities. As Masiyiwa put it, the future comes from young people building apps and solutions, small businesses every day across this continent using AI. They are the digital natives, and we have just given them the ability to do what they do best. This is what the third path looks like in practice. Instead of just exporting cobalt to power someone else's data centers, we are building our own data centers. Instead of just providing raw materials for AI development, we are creating the infrastructure for AI innovation right here on the continent. But building this third path requires more than just processing facilities and AI factories. It requires what I call mineral diplomacy from below. That means communities and civil society organizations demanding accountability, transparency, and benefit sharing from both governments and international partners. But the Masiyiwa-Nvidia partnership is significant because it demonstrates that African entrepreneurs can attract major international investments while maintaining ownership and control. This is very different from the extractive models we've been discussing, where external powers extract resources and value flows outward. The cost of ignoring root causes is that peace deals become temporary band-aids on systemic problems. Real peace requires addressing the fundamental question: who benefits from mineral extraction and who bears the costs? This is where the lessons from episode 1 become crucial. Just as we need data sovereignty to prevent our digital lives from being extracted, we need mineral sovereignty to ensure our physical resources serve our development priorities. The AI factory model shows us how this can work, using Africa's minerals to power Africa's AI infrastructure, creating value and jobs on the continent. The tools exist. Community monitoring systems can track mining impacts. Blockchain technology can create transparent supply chains. Digital platforms can facilitate benefit sharing agreements. And now, with AI infrastructure on the continent, African innovators can build these solutions without relying on external cloud services. The question is whether we will use these tools to transform extraction or simply make it more efficient. At the continent level, the African Union's continental AI strategy isn't just about technology. It's about ensuring that Africa's minerals power African development. This means negotiating collective agreements, setting common standards, and building shared infrastructure. The East African community is already piloting joint mineral processing facilities. The Southern African Development Community is developing common mining regulations. The African Free Trade Area is creating frameworks for intra-African value chains. These initiatives represent more than economic cooperation. They are building the foundation for technological sovereignty. They're saying Africa's minerals will power Africa's digital future and not just someone else's. In our next episode, we're going to explore how these dynamics play out in practice. We'll look at Kenya's AI strategy, natural language processing language models across the continent, and South Africa's G20 presidency. We will examine how African nations are moving from passive resource providers to active technology creators. But we'll also ask the hard questions. Are these initiatives enough? Can they scale? And what happens when local innovation meets global power politics? Before we go, let me leave you with this thought. The foreign ministers of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo signed a US-brokered peace deal aimed at ending a brutal conflict that has left thousands dead and millions displaced. This is a real achievement that deserves recognition. But peace isn't just the absence of war. It's the presence of justice. And justice requires that the benefits of mineral extraction flow to the communities that bear its costs. The new scramble is real. The question is whether African nations will be subjects or objects in this process. Whether there will be resource providers or value creators, whether there will be passive recipients of peace deals or active architects of their own futures. The tools for mineral sovereignty exist. The knowledge is emerging. The political will is building. The question is whether we will use this moment to break free from extractive patterns or allow ourselves to become the last iteration of the scramble for Africa, dressed in digital clothing. I'm Zainab Taonga Chirwa, and this has been episode 2 of Not Just Observers. The essay that inspired this series is available on my Substack, where I dive deeper into these concepts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and join me next time as we explore how African nations are building technological sovereignty from the ground up. If this episode challenged your assumptions or gave you new insights, share it with someone who needs to hear this conversation. You can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, and Substack. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay in community. Remember, resistance isn't just protest, it's policymaking, infrastructure building, and technological sovereignty. We are not just observers.